So here's our FIPG prep discussion. So a couple little details. When we're going to get ready to seal these surfaces, we need to have these totally clean. So there's just a little bit more work to do. There's a few different ways to do it, but as you can see over here on this timing cover, what do you want? Go back to work. On this timing cover, we've got, yeah, well, you're going to wait for it unless you got cash. So we've got this timing cover pretty cleaned. There's a few different ways to go about that. We got a razor blade we're using. You could use a razor blade in several ways, but one of the ways is just kind of go along like this. You can kind of scrape like that. Okay, technically per the book, we should not use this razor blade. We should use a plastic one. But if you're careful, you can use a regular steel razor blade all the time. It'll be just fine. So we're scraping any of the big pieces off, and then we're going to come through with the whiz wheel and a roll-lock disc. This is plastic. Don't use a cookie disc that's abrasive. It'll literally grind the aluminum away, and then it'll have a low spot and it won't seal. So we'll kind of go along with this. Get it spinning. You know, and that's already been done on this one. We'll get like really cleaned up like that. Same thing on this end. Couple things to look out for. This is a sealing surface. This seals with O-rings. This seals with FIPG. Actually, this one seals with an O-ring too. But there are different surfaces we need to watch. And we also need to make sure that we don't drop any O-rings out of here. Then when all that's good, we'll have the timing chain ready. That's not really what this is about. This is about the gasket prep. The last thing we're going to do is we're going to be ready with brake clean or similar. This is essentially the same as brake clean, and we'll clean it. Get like this little oil is not a problem, except by the time we tip the timing cover up, if this oil right here runs across our surface like that, that will be a leak. 100% guaranteed will leak. So we need to clean all the oil, make sure it's all good. Then we're going to use our FIPG equivalent. A couple options there. And then TIS explains where to put FIPG and how much. So just for understanding, it talks about all these places being FIPG, specifies those are surfaces to be cleaned. It specifies right here where the cylinder head meets the block to put a little 5mm bead of FIPG there. It specifies down here, it also calls out exactly the part number, and there are quite a few equivalents offered by Permatex and whatnot, but it said the standard diameter is 5mm. Then down here, this literally specifies the thickness bead that we're going to apply. And so for an example, we've got a solid line, we've got a dashed lines, we've got A, B, C, D, and so it calls out A, we should put a little extra bead, and that's at a seam. B, C, D, and E all need a little extra bead at a seam. But then it specifies a dashed line. We're using the genuine seal pack black. Continuous line is genuine seal pack black. Alternate long and short dashed line is Toyota Genuine Seal Packing 128-2B. That's more the gray. So they're actually talking about a couple different types, and then it specifies 2.5 to 3mm is the dashed line. So let's check that out. The dashed lines, it's a little tough to see, but there's dashed lines all down here. So that would be 2.5 to 3mm. Then there's also some solid lines. So it calls it all out. A continuous line is 4.5 to 5.5mm. And so you really want to get your thoughts together on exactly how you're going to lay this out. And then you're basically going to make a bead that size. So it's kind of hard to make actually a 2.5mm bead. So we've got the seal packing or the FIPG equivalent here, but it should come with a little cone. We're out of cones because we're using it over and over and over. But you're basically going to go along like you're making a cake, and if you're trying to do a trick, you can use this little plastic bag and poke a small hole, and I'll see if I can get it to come out kind of in a small little hole here. That's the goal, okay? So, and we're going to wipe this off because we're not quite ready for this, but if this is supposed to be a 2.5 millimeter bead area, that's probably a little more. That's probably like 4 millimeters. And then the thing to consider is like, what do you want to do with this bolt? Mostly we want to seal inside the bolt, but sometimes it actually calls to go around the bolt hole. So you may want to check on that. What we don't want to do is just blob this stuff everywhere. What we also don't want to do is right here, like if I start and stop, that little seam right there will become a leak. And so if I have to come through and dot a little bit more on, so be it. We need a continuous seal, and we'll do the amount it calls out all the way. So let's say, as an example, I want to say it was calling for more like 5 millimeters down here. If it's a 5 millimeter section, you know, we'll go a little heavier. You know, we could do something more like that. And so you're going to go through and you're going to try to put the right amount that it calls for. Some people, if it gets a little sloppy, like that really wasn't a great job, we can do a little wipe here, and we can kind of like, you know, spread it out just a little bit so it's more consistent. But there's a little bit of an art to this. Now, when you get that all done, and there's a couple things to consider. You can put it on the cover, and that's easier to apply it, but you could also put it on the engine side, which makes it a little bit easier when you're trying to get the cover in. You can do it either way, and then once you get it all set, and don't forget all these little spots, there's a couple things. You need to make sure there's no oil at all. So for me, I really should have sprayed this all out, and that's why this is just practice. I had to spray this all out, made sure there's no oil on this. Then once I did the FIPG, so I'm going to wipe this off because it, like I said, practice, demo. Once I got the FIPG on there, I'm going to take my brake parts cleaner or similar, and I'm going to clean all this up. I'm going to come back to it off camera and clean up, I swear. My last thing that I would do, I would take my brake parts cleaner and I would spray this all down, make sure there's no oily residue here. Spray this all down, and then I bring this cover right in here. So you've got 10 minutes from the time that we apply the FIPG to have that cover on, have the bolts in, get it torqued. So you got to kind of plan it out and have it rehearsed. So hopefully that helps. Once you put that on, there's a curing time, usually a couple hours, sometimes more, before you can put oil in it. And so have your stuff ready and in line. Don't forget a lot of those little seams, it calls for a little bit of extra, you know, beads and stuff. So that's what you got. Also, when you bring the cover in, if you bring the cover in and you bump against this and it wipes a dry spot, that's going to become a leak. So you want to get the cover in without hitting anything and just go straight on. Of course, the timing will be set at that point. So hopefully that helps.